So today I want to talk about something very timely and extremely dear, at least I think dear to your heart, much more than the other topics. It's this idea of Europe as an empire, which is compelling in of itself. Can you define that for us?
Yeah, I published this booklet, Great Empires and Small Nations, which basically refers to Europe, but also in Spanish, also in Catalan, actually. And so this was 2006, and about exactly the same time, a colleague in Oxford, Jan Zielonka, published another book titled Europe as an Empire. So we had the same idea at the same time. We got together and worked together. It's very nice. But it was something in there, I think, no? This idea that Europe is not a state, the European Union is not going to be a state, because there is no sovereignty in Europe anymore. The states are not sovereign because they don't have the final decision power on all the issues within the same territory, as is the definition of sovereignty, right? And the European Union is not going to have this either. It's more multiple levels of governments. And also, it's not a federation. The European Union is not exactly a federation. It is not yet. And then, so there are other polities, other forms of organization of the political community that are under study. It is not only the state all the time, but also cities and federations and empires. And I think these categories should be applied, and the empire may fit because empire means we had a big success when the president of the European Commission, Barroso, said in public, when he was asked in a press conference, well, how do you find the European Union? And he said, well, some scholars say that it's an empire, I agree, but it's a non-imperialistic empire. Exactly, he was right, he understood. I mean, it's an empire in the sense of
Will be the first time he was right on something.
Well, now it's not in office anymore. But no, he was a colleague in Georgetown with me many years ago. He was a visiting professor. We met, and he was in Oxford as well. He knew about it. And the idea is that it's an empire in the sense of the internal organization, but not an imperialist policy abroad as a foreign policy. Okay? Just as the structure, internal structure. So multiple levels of government, and then a lot of asymmetries, which are not proper in a stable federation, right? So you know a little about, well, you know a lot about Europe, actually.
Yeah, for the better, for the worse. So can you, because I think this is a very hot topic with a lot of tension, if you could, you mentioned the asymmetry between the countries.
Yeah, well, some countries are not in the euro, right? Out of the 28, only 19 is going to be now. There are still more candidates, but some of them will never join. The United Kingdom in particular. Not all countries share the same agreement for freedom of travel across borders. Not all the countries are committed to the same common policies on every issue. And even there's one point of asymmetry. And the other point is that the limits of the union are not fixed yet. So there are still few candidates that want to join, and a decision has not been made about they are going to be accepted or not. As it happened in the United States in the 19th century, the first 13 colonies eventually became 50, right?
Yes.
It took a very long process, and then, well, we're in this process. Only at the moment that we'll say, okay, that's the limit, and the union ends here, there will be the possibility to create stable institutions inside the union. First thing we need to know is who we are, I mean, who the Europeans are. Otherwise, the internal organization is going to be always open or not completely completed. Or somewhere else.
So, do you think it's still a beast that's undefinable? Because I see here that you have Europe, like America.
Well, let me show you. I have a textbook on political institutions. This is the first edition, which was published in Spanish as well and in Italian. And then we're having very soon the fourth edition after almost 20 years. So every 5-6 years we have had a new edition updated. Now it's much more focused on the European Union, more than the States actually. And then this little booklet is a comparison between the process of building the European Union and the process of building the United States in the 19th century. And then if you look at that experience, so, well, it took a long while. So European Union say, oh, it's slow, never completed, there's still so many pending issues, of course. But
Its boundaries aren't even defined.
yeah, but look at the United States. Since independence until the beginning of the 20th century, so for about 140 years or more, okay, the limits were not defined at all. So many territories in the Midwest and the West were still ruled directly from Washington. They didn't have their own institutions. And I think the last one was Colorado in 1911, I think, and before Hawaii and Alaska. But that became a state with elected legislature and a governor. And then if you think about 1911, 1912, 1913, the House was fixed with 435 seats. The Senate was elected in all the states by the same procedure, so directly elected by the voters. The Federal Reserve was created, and the FBI was created at the time.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so all these institutions took at least, say, from the Civil War on, since the Civil War, from that moment on, about 50 years, okay? Not from the beginning, from the Civil War, okay? In order to have institutional, clear design and stability. Well, in Europe, now it's a little more than that, it's 60-something years from the very beginning, something like that. Oh? But 50-something years. But we're very ahead of that process. We have about the same kind of challenges to establish the limits and to establish stable institutions. But if you compare the two experiences, I think the European Union could become something like the United States of Europe in some foreseeable future. And